Today we are covering every single MiG aircraft, from MiG-1 all the way to MiG-35. No number gets skipped. Some of these are legendary combat aircraft. Some never left the drawing board. Some were total disasters. But every single one has a story. Let's get into it. MiG stands for Mikoyan-Gurevich. Those are the two men who founded the design bureau, Artem Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich. They were a Soviet aircraft design team. Their bureau was created in 1939. Their job was simple: build the best fighter aircraft possible. The MiG name became one of the most recognized names in military aviation history. Most people find MiG numbering confusing. Where are all the even numbers like MiG-14 or MiG-16? Before 1940, Soviet aircraft were named by their role. Fighters were called I for Istrebitel, which simply means fighter. That changed in 1940. The Soviet Union started naming aircraft after the design bureau that built them. The Mikoyan-Gurevich Bureau became MiG, and with that change came a simple rule: odd numbers for fighters, even numbers for everything else. Bombers, transports, and ground attack planes. You can see this with Tupolev bombers like the Tu-2, Tu-4, and Tu-16, all even numbers. Since MiG almost exclusively built fighters, all their aircraft got odd numbers. MiG-1, MiG-3, MiG-15, MiG-21, MiG-29, right up to today. This wasn't a strict written law. It was more of a strong tradition enforced by Soviet military institutions when they officially assigned names, but it held for decades. The few even-numbered MiGs that do exist, like the MiG-8, were experimental aircraft, not combat fighters, so the rule simply didn't apply to them. MiG-1. The MiG-1 was the very first aircraft to carry the MiG name. It first flew on April 5, 1940. The Soviet Air Force needed a high-altitude fighter. The MiG-1 was designed for that exact role. It was a fighter and high-altitude interceptor. The engine was a Mikoyan AM-35A, producing 1,350 horsepower. Top speed was 628 kilometers per hour, about 390 miles per hour. It could reach a ceiling of 12,000 meters, or roughly 39,000 feet. It carried one 12.7mm machine gun and two smaller 7.6 2mm machine guns. It was a small aircraft. It was built mostly from steel tubing and wood to save aluminum. The design was clean and fast for its time, but it had serious problems. It was very unstable at high speed. Pilots found it extremely difficult to handle. Spin recovery was almost impossible. The cockpit was open. Radio equipment was often missing. The range was very short. Only 100 were built. Despite the problems, it was the foundation of everything that followed. MiG-3. The MiG-3 was a direct development of the MiG-1. It was also a fighter and high-altitude interceptor built in 1940. It used the same Mikoyan AM-35A engine, producing 1,350 horsepower. Top speed improved slightly to 640 kilometers per hour, 398 miles per hour. The ceiling matched the MiG-1 at 12,000 meters. Armament was one 12.7mm and two 7.6 2mm machine guns. Engineers fixed many of the earlier aircraft's problems. The cockpit was enclosed, the range was improved, performance at high altitude was excellent. Above 5,000 meters, no Soviet fighter could match it. But below that altitude, it struggled. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, most air battles happened at low and medium altitudes. The MiG-3 was the wrong aircraft for the war it found itself in. Some pilots became aces flying it anyway. 3 MiG-3s once intercepted a German reconnaissance plane. All 3 crashed from uncontrollable spins trying to catch it. Around 3,422 MiG-3s were built in total before production ended. Many pilots flew it bravely. Some rammed German bombers after running out of ammunition. They were ordered to stop enemy bombers by any means necessary. MiG-4. MiG-4 was an informal designation for a proposed ground attack aircraft called the PBSH-1. It was canceled in 1940 in favor of the Ilyushin IL-2. It was never built as a combat aircraft. MiG-5. The MiG-5 is one of the most confusing designations in MiG history. The number was reserved, but the aircraft never used it officially. It was actually designated MiG-DIST. It was a twin-engine escort fighter built in 1941. 2 Mikoyan AM-37 engines were planned as its power plant. Only 2 prototypes were ever built. The program was plagued with problems. The engines were unreliable. Performance was poor. The project was canceled in 1943. The MiG design team was struggling in these early years. The MiG-5 represented a dead end. MiG-6. MiG-6 appeared in design documents as a reconnaissance and ground attack aircraft. It was also referred to as the PBSH-2. It never moved beyond paper. The design was canceled before any metal was cut. MiG-7. The MiG-7 was an attempt to develop an improved high-altitude interceptor based on MiG-3 concepts, but the MiG-7 designation itself is not clearly established in official Soviet records. Work began around early 1940s, during World War II development of MiG-3 variants. The Mikoyan AM-37 was planned but faced reliability and production issues rather than simply poor performance. The AM-37 also went out of production. The project was canceled. This conclusion is broader. Piston fighters continued development through late World War II, but jet aircraft were already emerging as the next generation. The future belonged to jets. MiG-8 Utka. The MiG-8 was completely different from anything MiG had built before. It was an experimental liaison aircraft, first flown in 1945. Its nickname was Utka, which means duck in Russian. It had a canard layout. The small wings were at the front, not the back. The engine was a pusher propeller at the rear. The wings were swept and mounted high on the fuselage. It was built from wood and fabric. It was used purely as an aerodynamic research vehicle. Top speed was only around 204 kilometers per hour, or about 127 miles per hour. It was never meant for combat. It completed its role as a research aircraft and was not developed further into production. MiG-9. The MiG-9 was a huge milestone. It was MiG's first jet-powered aircraft. Its NATO reporting name was Fargo. It first flew in 1946. The engines were Soviet-built RD-20 turbojets, which were copies of the German BMW 003 captured from World War II. Top speed reached 911 kilometers per hour, or 566 miles per hour. It could climb to a ceiling of 13,500 meters, or about 44,300 feet. Armament was one 37mm cannon and two 23mm cannons. A total of 610 were built. The aircraft itself was completely new. It was a clean, conventional design, but there were serious problems. The engines were unreliable. Early jet technology was simply not mature yet. There was also a dangerous issue. When the guns were fired at high altitude, the engine would flame out from gun gases entering the air intake. This forced engineers to limit gun use in certain conditions. Despite the flaws, the MiG-9 gave Soviet pilots and engineers their first real experience with jet aviation. It paved the way for the aircraft that changed everything. MiG-11. The MiG-11 was not a confirmed official designation. These aircraft were part of experimental Mikoyan-Gurevich projects from World War II. The military designated it as I-220, one of several related prototypes. The project started because German high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft were flying too high for normal Soviet fighters to intercept. Designers built prototypes using mixed construction. The first plane used earlier Mikoyan engine variants. The second plane used a new Mikoyan AM-39 engine. This second plane reached a reported top speed around approximately 690 to 700 kilometers per hour. MiG-13. The MiG-13 is better known by its design bureau designation I-250. It was an experimental mixed-power fighter with its first flight in 1945. It used a piston engine combined with a supplementary thrust device called a VRDK reaction engine system. This system compressed air, mixed it with fuel, and ignited it in a combustion chamber, basically an early attempt at a jet-like booster. It provided extra thrust for about 10 minutes. The claimed top speed was 825 kilometers per hour or 513 miles per hour, though aviation historians considered this figure unreliable. The design was extraordinarily complex. In 1946, 8 I-250 aircraft were built called MiG-13, which were soon sent to military trials. They were retired in 1948 without ever seeing combat. MiG-15 Faggot. This is the aircraft that changed everything. The MiG-15 shocked the Western world when it appeared over Korea in November 1950. Its NATO reporting name was Faggot. It was a jet fighter and interceptor with its first flight in 1947. The engine was a Klimov VK-1, a reverse-engineered development of the British Rolls-Royce Nene, a technology transfer that Britain later regretted. Top speed was 668 miles per hour. It could reach a ceiling of over 50,000 feet. Armament was two 23mm cannons and one 37mm cannon. More than 13,000 were built, making it among the most produced jet fighters. American pilots had never faced anything like it. The aircraft was small and swept wing. It climbed fast. It flew high. American B-29 bombers, which had ruled the skies in World War II, were suddenly vulnerable. The MiG-15 forced the U.S. military to rush the F-86 Sabre to Korea. The two aircraft fought one of history's great jet dogfight campaigns. The MiG-15 had weaknesses. It was unstable at high Mach numbers and had a poor gun sight, but its performance was undeniable. Over 20 countries flew it. Some trainers remained in service decades later. If you're still watching, we create original content. We've made videos on all F-Series, A-Series, and B-Series aircraft. Feel free to check those out after this video. Our goal is to help you understand the history and design of aircraft so that whenever you see a plane, you know its background and how it was developed. These videos take a lot of research to produce. If you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. MiG-17. Fresco. The MiG-17 looked like the MiG-15 from a distance, but it was a significantly improved aircraft. Its NATO reporting name was Fresco. It first flew in 1950. It was powered by a Klimov VK-1F engine with afterburner. Top speed was 1,145 kilometers per hour or 711 miles per hour at altitude. The ceiling was 16,600 meters or 54,460 feet. Armament was one 37mm cannon and two 23mm cannons. Over 10,000 were built. The wing was redesigned with a more complex sweep. The tail was taller. The afterburner added extra thrust. It was faster and more maneuverable at altitude than the MiG-15. It entered service in 1954. At least 25 countries operated it. Its moment of fame came in Vietnam. American pilots flying supersonic F-105s and F-4 Phantoms found themselves in turning fights with this much slower aircraft. The MiG-17's tight turn radius and heavy cannon armament caused serious problems for American aircraft. It proved that speed alone does not win a dogfight. MiG-19. Farmer, the MiG-19 was the first Soviet production aircraft capable of level supersonic flight. Its NATO reporting name was Farmer. It first flew in 1952 and became fully operational in 1955. It was powered by two Tumansky RD-9B afterburning turbojets, a new twin-engine layout for MiG. Top speed was Mach 1.35. The ceiling was 17,900 meters, or nearly 59,000 feet. Armament was 330mm NR-30 cannons. Around 2,000 were built in the Soviet Union, plus additional licensed production in China as the J-6. The MiG-15 and MiG-17 could go supersonic in a dive. The MiG-19 could do it straight and level. The swept wing was thin and sharply tapered. The three 30mm cannons gave it devastating firepower. In July 1960, a MiG-19 shot down an American RB-47H reconnaissance aircraft over the Barents Sea. In 1965, a Shenyang J-6, which is the Chinese license-built version of the MiG-19, damaged an American F-104 starfighter with cannon fire. It was used in the Arab-Israeli Wars of 1967. China built a licensed copy called the J-6. Over 1,000 J-6 were produced in China alone. MiG-21, Fishbed. The MiG-21 is the most produced supersonic fighter jet in history. Its NATO reporting name was Fishbed. It entered service in 1959. The engine on later variants was the Tumansky R-25-300. Top speed was Mach 2.1. The ceiling was 19,000 meters, over 62,000 feet. The rate of climb was extraordinary, around 17,600 meters per minute. Armament was one twin-barrel 23mm GSH-23L cannon plus air-to-air missiles. More than 11,000 were built. Pilots from over 50 countries on 4 continents have flown it. It has seen combat in more conflicts than almost any other aircraft. The design was simple and elegant. A delta wing, a single engine, and a pointed nose. It was light. It was fast. In Vietnam, MiG-21s carrying heat-seeking missiles ambushed American strike packages with deadly effectiveness. In the Middle East, MiG-21s fought in nearly every major conflict from 1967 onwards. Its weakness was a short range and limited radar, but for a quick interceptor, it was nearly perfect. Production ran for decades. Some air forces still operate modernized versions today. MiG-23, Flogger. The MiG-23 was a major leap forward. Its NATO reporting name was Flogger. It first flew in 1967. The engine was a Kachaturov R 35-300 afterburning turbojet. Top speed was Mach 2.35. The ceiling was 18,500 meters, about 60,700 feet. Armament included 123mm GSH-23L cannon plus a range of air-to-air missiles, the R-23, R-24, R-60, and R-73. Around 5,000 were built. It introduced a variable sweep wing. The pilot could change the wing angle in flight. Swept back meant high speed. Spread forward meant better low-speed handling. It was the first Soviet fighter with a look-down/shoot-down radar. It could detect and engage targets flying below it against ground clutter, something older radars could not do. It could fire missiles beyond visual range. It was exported widely to Soviet allied nations. It saw combat in the Middle East, Africa, and elsewhere. Its kill record in those conflicts was mixed. It depended heavily on pilot training. The MiG-23 was a capable aircraft, but it was complex to fly and maintain. MiG-25, Foxbat. In the mid-1960s, American intelligence got satellite photos of a new Soviet jet under development. It looked enormous. The photos suggested it could fly at Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound, and maneuver like a fighter. The U.S. panicked. They rushed development of the F-15 Eagle specifically to counter this jet. Then, in 1976, a Soviet pilot named Viktor Belenko defected and flew his MiG-25 to Japan, landing at Hakodate Airport and asking for asylum in America. Western engineers got to take apart a real MiG-25 for the first time. What they found surprised them. Its NATO reporting name was Foxbat. It first flew in 1964. The engines were 2 Tamansky R-15B-300 turbojets. Top speed was Mach 2.8 to 3.0 in operational limits. Mach 3.2 was achievable in short bursts, but could damage engines. That is faster than a rifle bullet. The ceiling was 22,000 meters, or 72,000 feet. Armament was 4 R-40 air-to-air missiles. There was no cannon. 1,190 were built. This aircraft was faster than anything NATO had. A speed of Mach 3.2 put it completely out of reach of most interceptors. It entered service in 1970. It flew reconnaissance missions over the Middle East. Israeli F-4 Phantoms tried to intercept it. They failed. The MiG-25 simply accelerated away. In 1976, Soviet pilot Viktor Belenko defected to Japan in a MiG-25. NATO finally got a look inside. What they found was surprising. The aircraft was not sophisticated. It was mostly stainless steel. The electronics were old-fashioned. It was built for one purpose: raw speed. It could not turn well. It was not meant for dogfighting. It was a sprinter. But as a sprinter, nothing could catch it. It also served as a reconnaissance platform and could carry external fuel tanks for extended missions. MiG-27. The MiG-27 started life as a variant of the MiG-23. Its NATO reporting name was Flogger D and Flogger J. It first flew in 1970. The engine was a Tumansky R-29B 300 afterburning turbojet. Top speed was Mach 1.77. The ceiling was 14,000 meters, about 45,900 feet. Armament included a powerful 30mm Gryazev-Shipunov GS-630 rotary cannon, plus bombs, rockets, and missiles. Around 1,075 were built. It shared the same variable sweep wing as the MiG-23, but the MiG-27 was completely redesigned for ground attack. The nose was reshaped, shorter, and more angular to give the pilot a better view of the ground. The variable engine intakes of the MiG-23 were replaced with simpler fixed inlets. This reduced top speed, but it also reduced weight, cost, and maintenance. It could carry a heavy load of bombs, rockets, and missiles. MiG-28. MiG-28 is famous for one reason. It appeared in the 1986 American film Top Gun. In the film, it was the enemy aircraft that Maverick and Goose encountered. In reality, no aircraft with that designation was ever built by MiG. The aircraft shown in the film was actually an American F-5E Tiger II painted black, but thanks to Hollywood, everyone knows the name. MiG-29. The MiG-29 is one of the great fighter aircraft of the modern era. Its NATO reporting name was Fulcrum. It first flew in 1977 and entered Soviet service in 1983. The engines were 2 Klimov RD-33 afterburning turbofans. Top speed was Mach 2.25. The ceiling was 18,000 meters, about 59,000 feet. combat range was approximately 1,500 kilometers. Armament was one 30mm GSH-31 cannon plus up to 6 air-to-air missiles or a mixed ground attack load. Over 1,600 were built. When Western pilots finally encountered it at air shows and through defectors, they were impressed. The aircraft had an IRST, an infrared search and track system, mounted in front of the cockpit. This allowed it to track targets without using radar. Radar silence was a tactical advantage. The helmet-mounted sight let pilots aim missiles simply by looking at a target. The MiG-29 was extremely maneuverable. It could perform the famous Cobra maneuver, pitching the nose almost vertically while continuing to fly forward. This was not just a display trick. At very close range, it could help a pilot force an overshoot. It was exported to dozens of countries. Many operators still fly it today. The MiG-29K is the naval carrier-based version. MiG-31. The MiG-31 was developed from the MiG-25, but it was a very different aircraft. Its NATO reporting name was Foxhound. It first flew in 1975 and entered service in 1981. The engines were two Soloviev D30F6 afterburning turbofans. Top speed was Mach 2.83. The ceiling was 20,600 meters, about 67,600 feet. It had a crew of two, a pilot and a weapons systems officer. Armament was one 23mm cannon plus up to 4 long-range R-33 air-to-air missiles. Over 500 were built. It was larger than the MiG-25. The WSO, Weapons Systems Officer, sat behind the pilot and operated the radar and weapons. The Zaslon phased array radar was one of the most powerful airborne radars of its era. It could track multiple targets simultaneously. A flight of 4 MiG-31s could create a radar barrier 900 kilometers wide. No aircraft could fly through Soviet airspace undetected. It was designed to intercept cruise missiles, bombers, and high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. It can also detect and attack low-flying targets, something the MiG-25 could not do. It remains in Russian service today in upgraded forms. The MiG-31K variant carries the Kinzhal hypersonic missile. MiG-33. The MiG-33 story is complicated. The designation was used in two separate ways. First, it was applied to an early 1980s design for a single-engine lightweight fighter, similar in concept to the American F-16. That project was canceled. Second, the name MiG-33 was used during development of what eventually became the MiG-29M, an advanced multi-role version of the MiG-29. The MiG-33 label was eventually dropped. The final aircraft entered service under the MiG-29M name. Some export variants of the MiG-29 have also been informally referred to using this designation. It is one of the most confusing numbers in the entire MiG lineup. MiG-35. The MiG-35 is the most advanced aircraft in the MiG lineup. Its NATO reporting name is Fulcrum-F. It is a 4++ generation multi-role fighter. Production began in 2016. The Russian Aerospace Forces received the first two production aircraft on June 17, 2019. The engines are two Klimov RD-33MK afterburning turbofans. Each engine produces around 84 kilonewtons, roughly 19,000 pounds of thrust, with afterburner. Top speed exceeds Mach 2. Maximum takeoff weight is around 23,500 kilograms, about 51,800 pounds. It has 9 hardpoints for weapons. Armament includes one 30mm GSH-31 cannon plus a wide variety of air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons. The radar is an AESA, active electronically scanned array, capable of tracking up to 30 targets simultaneously. As of 2024, more than 6 serial production aircraft have been built. It is a direct development of the MiG-29M. It has a built-in air-to-air refueling probe for essentially unlimited range. The airframe has reduced radar cross-section compared to earlier MiG-29 variants. It is corrosion resistant. The two-seat version is the MiG-35UB. Production numbers have remained very small. Russia has not ordered it in large quantities. It competes in the export market against the Su-35 and other advanced fighters. The MiG-35 is the end of the Fulcrum lineage, a very long road that started with the MiG-29 back in 1977. And that is every single MiG, from MiG-1 to MiG-35, from a wooden propeller aircraft that barely anyone could control to a supersonic multi-role fighter with AESA radar. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Drop a comment on which MiG is your favorite. Subscribe if you want more content. See you in the next one. Click here to watch F Series, A Series, and B Series.